Sly Cooper is a game that is indicative of the era that it was released. Released on the early PS2 days, it was coming out around the time when you were seeing something of a mascot boom for the system. This was around the time when Ratchet & Clank and Jak and Daxter and relatively unknown newcomers like Dr. Muto were making their debut. Sly Cooper was released by relative unknown studio Sucker Punch, which had only really done one notable game before this on the Nintendo 64, known as Rocket Robot on Wheels. If you haven't heard about it, I'm not surprised, because the game was not a very big success. Sucker Punch actually did a lot of work with other studios on their own projects, but never really did much in the way of creating their own game before Rocket, and it took them quite a while afterwards before Sly Cooper came about. Now, when I say the game is indicative of its era, I don't mean that it was just another attempt to create a brand new mascot, the same way that everybody was trying to copy Sonic the Hedgehog back in the day. In fact, this game actually tries a little less hard than some of the other games of the era to try and make Sly seem like someone that would be featured in a lot of spin-offs and other people's franchises and whatnot. Instead, what I mean is, the game is very much an early PS2 game. It has all the charm and whimsy of a brand new console, but it also has a few of those minor flaws that keep it from being truly accessible to more modern gamers who weren't around at the time to witness its greatness firsthand. The story concerns the titular character, Sly Cooper, in his bid to try and avenge his father's death. Sly, you see, comes from a long line of master thieves who have all kept all of their knowledge in a tome that was handed down from generation to generation, known as the Thievius Raccoonus. However, before he could inherit the book, his father was murdered by a group of international criminals known as the Fiendish Five, who then split the book into 5 different pieces and scattered to the wind. Years later, now an adult and really wanting to put the hurt on these guys, Sly teamed up with his childhood friends Bentley the Brainiac and Murray, their driver, in order to try and form a supergroup to try and take down his arch-enemies. The story has what I would call a very personal focus. While it is true that the guys you're taking down are international criminals who are doing a lot of bad in the world, there aren't really a whole lot of stakes aside from Sly's personal quest to get back his birthright and to avenge his father's death. It's a simple story, but it's really carried about well by the comic book style of the entire presentation, as well as the great character dynamics between Sly and his 2 friends Bentley and Murray, as well as the interaction between the bosses that we see when Sly meets up with one of them. In fact, a lot of the bosses seem to have a bit more personality than Sly himself, at least in this first game. Sly is presented as a very smooth-talking, very whimsical, cynical character in his own right, but he doesn't really get a chance to shine until later games in the series, which is one of the only downfalls of this game. The other characters, however brief their experiences might be, do manage to leave quite a bit of impression on you, whether it be Sir Raleigh's perfectly cromulent British insanity, or Mugshot's dim-witted, muscle-bound, Joyzy accent. They're all just a joy to listen to. The structure of the game is also a bit of a throwback to early 3D platforming with what was, at the time, more modern twists on the old formula. It's a linear platformer with a few ideas taken from areas like Crash Bandicoot and Super Mario 3D. The idea here is that there are 5 different worlds, 4 of which have 7 different levels and a hub world in each of them. In the hub world, you travel to any of the 7 different levels and attempt to try and find the treasure key in each one through a series of acrobatic feats and stealthy missions. Actually, a lot more emphasis here is put on platforming and athletics rather than on sneaking and stealth kills. While there are enemies in the game that can take you down very easily, in fact, Sly's status as a one-hit point wonder in this game is one of the more frustrating aspects of it. It can be said that you don't do a whole lot of sneaking. Rather, you travel on the rooftops or find ways around obviously locked doors by climbing walls, buildings, sliding on ropes, and things like that. And while you may die in one hit, your enemies also die in one hit as well, so things do balance out, and you never have to fight more than 2 or 3 enemies at a time. So, yay for that. The boss battles, on the other hand, are very varied and do take a lot of getting used to, because every single fight plays out differently. You're not just learning an attack pattern and then wailing on them. While you might do that in the first fight, the second fight has you actively avoiding the boss and trying to rotate mirrors so that you can try and distract him with sunlight. He can't be hurt directly, so you have to avoid him for as long as possible. The third fight changes this up even more drastically by turning the entire game into a rhythm minigame for a little while, and is widely regarded as that one boss fight by many of the people who have played this game, just because it is so difficult. The game does change things up here and there by giving you a few unusual levels here and there, where you're usually piloting a vehicle, manning a gun turret, or racing around a race course for a few laps. These are a nice change of pace, and they don't show up so often that they become an annoyance. In fact, the only ones that I would really call truly terrible in this game would have to be the 2 racing levels where you have to pilot Murray's van around a racetrack. The reason for this mostly being because of the extremely unforgiving and rubber-banding AI. The controls in this game are also really tight, which is very appreciative since it is a platformer and requires a lot of control over the main character. Sly controls very tightly and very easily. He almost seems to glide as he's running, which makes him a lot of fun to control. The vehicles are also relatively easy to control, though again the racing levels introduce some much more realistic car physics which kind of clash with the tighter, more comic booky feeling of the controls from before. Also, a majority of the actions that Sly takes are relegated to a single button, the circle button, and you can access most powers just by looking for blue sparkles that appear on rails, on points, and other places like that where he can actually use his thieving abilities. The music is also pretty enjoyable, but I wouldn't say it's something that you have to get a soundtrack for. There's nothing really super memorable here, it just complements itself very well. I do appreciate the sliding smoothness of it. It really gives it a noir feeling despite how colorful the rest of the world looks. In terms of gameplay length, the game is relatively short. 4 worlds, 7 levels each, and each level is not very long in and of itself if you know the gimmick to each level. So I would say, for somebody who has never played this game before, it might take you a few days to beat if you were dedicated to it. However, this game has a lot of replayability in that it has collectibles that actually mean something. Scattered throughout every single level in the game are a number of clue bottles, anywhere from as little as 15 to as many as 40. If you find all the clues in a level, you'll be able to unlock the safe within that level. Inside the safe will either be a new power-up for Sly, or just something extra that can be accessed from the main menu. Once you find all the clues in a level, you'll be able to go back to it and access the extremely frustrating but incredibly rewarding time trial mission. If you manage to beat that level within the time trial mode, you unlock the commentary for that level. Yes, in something that I have not seen another game do anywhere in any other game. This game has a commentary for every single one of the platforming levels. If you beat the time trial mode, you can have the commentary play while you are playing through the level, listening to the creators talk about what was going through their minds, how they designed certain enemies and certain obstacles, and it just, God, it's just so rewarding. It feels so nice to have a game that actually rewards you for your efforts other than giving you a meaningless score or a meaningless trophy that in the long run does nothing for you as a gamer. This is a game that rewards you for your playing strengths the right way. Sly, of course, would go on to have 2 more adventures on the PlayStation 2, Sly 2 Band of Thieves and Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves. and afterwards he would get a bit of a revival on the PlayStation 3 with an HD collection of his first 3 games, as well as a late Sly 4, which was released by new publisher Sanzaru Games. The Sly Cooper series are hit games, make no mistake about it, and while they haven't reached quite the level of fame that you would expect from, say, the icons of video gaming, Sly Cooper has proven himself to be a classic character in video gaming and maintains a very strong fan base. So much so that Sanzaru has pretty much all but confirmed in the ending to Sly 4 that there will be a Sly 5, and I for one cannot wait to see that happen. If you're a fan of older 3D platformers or early PlayStation 2 games that have a lot of charm and innovation to them, Sly Cooper is definitely a game that you should at least try out. It might not play to everybody's strengths, but it is definitely a game that will put a smile on your face if nothing else. Besides, the game is dirt cheap at this point, so there really is no excuse for you to check this out. Most of the other games in the series are similarly priced, so you might as well pick those up as well. Or if you don't feel like purchasing multiple games, just get the HD collection for the PS3. It's pretty much just the same thing, except an even better bargain than before. And here's hoping that Sly and friends will return for another adventure soon. I really don't want to have to wait another 7 years for the next game in the series to come out. You hear me, Sanzaru? This has been Goombasa for the Overshield, signing out.